Good afternoon and welcome to FirstBeat Morgan Cup race strategy and routing overview. This is Stuart Greenfield, and yes, it's been a bit of a rainy, windy week, and it looks like tomorrow at the start we're going to still have some breeze. But this looks like a pretty tactical race in a reducing westerly breeze with a potentially slow finish. So the Morgan Cup tomorrow, 13:50 is the first warning. 2 o'clock start for classes 3 and 4. High water Portsmouth is 9:30 in the morning at 4.2 meters. We're in Neeps, so a couple of days after Neeps, so the tide's going to be reasonable but not overpowering, and it's going to get us down to the forts and Bembridge pretty quickly. Sunset is 9:18. Sunrise is 4:50, and the moon won't come up until about 2:30 in the morning, so it's going to be quite dark into the night. So, what is the Morgan Cup? Well, the Morgan Cup is one of the kind of old races from the Royal Ocean Racing Club, so the domestic season. It's not that long. It has gone to various places over the years, across the channel sometimes, but it has been going to Dartmouth more recently. And this race was put together really by the Royal Thames Yacht Club, and was sponsored by the bank, JP Morgan family, and that's why it's called the Morgan Cup really. So it's an interesting race. The prize giving will be in London actually later on in the year at the Royal Thames. So sort of different approach to this one, but still a good race. And sort of key challenges I see at the moment might be getting out of the Isle of Wight area. It's going to be a pretty deep beat right round Bembridge through Sandown Bay to Dunnose and around there, beating all the way up to the Needles probably, it looks like that. And then as the night goes on, we're going to have an easing breeze, and it could lead to a bit of a slow finish on Saturday morning. And there's going to be quite a few different routing variations, which you'll see as I progress with this this overview. So winners in the past, we've had a whole range of different boats winning this. We had a J109 just so in 2019. We've had fleets up to 86 boats. There's only a lot less this week. Obviously, it's not a fastnet year, so that tends to make an effect. We've had some Ran has won it recently, and so has Scarlet Oyster, and they're completely different ends of the spectrum in terms of design, race design. And just for the record, in 2000, my yacht 2XL, which is a Far 40, we won the race as well. That's me. That's quite good news. So this year we've got just 36 boats sailing. There are 12 double-handed, and the biggest class is IRC 3, so this routing is going to be for a Sunfast 3600, which is sort of a middle boat in this series, in this race. So the start, quite straightforward. We're going to go east from the squadron line, through the forts, round Bembridge Ledge, taking St Cat's and the Isle of Wight to starboard, and then from there, once you get to St Cat's, you can take your choice. This is when the routing starts getting interesting, and we'll talk about that in a second. So there's the route for you on the chart, and you can see it's just over 110 miles. And fairly straightforward by the looks of it, but of course we've got quite a lot of tide going on here, and this is going to be pretty much a beat all the way. Starting in fairly breezy but bouncy conditions off the back of the Wight, and then probably getting lighter and lighter as we progress across Lyme Bay in the middle of the night. I will be sailing myself, so I'm not even sure from the routing at the moment what my tactics might be, but this is what it's all about, isn't it? So looking at the synoptic chart, you can see that there is high pressure over Biscay at the moment, and we have got a bit of a cold front there, so it's going to be it's going to be a bit cloudy and a bit drizzly, I think in for Friday, and it will probably clear a little bit away for Saturday morning, and we could finish the race in a very light breeze, I think, but with the sun shining, I hope. But off Dartmouth and off the Mewstone, and I've sailed a lot around there, being a guy who went to Dartmouth College all those years ago, so I know how difficult it can be for those last few miles into the finish. And to be honest, only a couple of years ago I had to kedge right near the Mewstone waiting for any wind at all, and finally we got a bit of katabatic wind coming down the cliffs, which gave us a chance to get across the line. So even if you think you're in the lead right at the end, you never know what that little Dartmouth area around the Mewstone can do. So not much more to give you from the synoptic chart, but let's click on. So tide-wise, well, the tide is it's not a full strong spring. It's really only a couple of days after Neeps, so that's quite good news as the wind dies down during the night. But at the start, you'll have some tide taking you down to Bembridge, and then as soon as you get around Bembridge, it's going to be against you, and it's going to be against you all the way through. And I've got some timings for this to show you later on, all the way through until you probably get to the middle of Christchurch Bay, if you go that way, before the tide then takes you all the way through the night until about 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, in Lyme Bay, wherever you happen to be, where it'll turn against you. And then finally coming into the finish, it'll turn north at the end and be against you right at the finish. If you're doing okay, and then if you're in a Sunfast 3600 or a boat rating around that area. So grid models. Once again, you've seen this, I think, this chart before. We've got all the main models on my routing. I've looked at most of them. We're a little bit far out at the moment for some of the really high definition models to get us all the way to the finish, because it is literally 3:30 on Thursday. So I will be updating, obviously all my grid files before the start tomorrow morning to make sure we've got the latest data. And it could be that a lot of the routings that I show you here will change, but hopefully this will give you an idea of roughly where we're going with this race. So first view is GFS. As you can see, it says finish time at 10:37. You can see that we are obviously beating right in close to Sandown Bay, right in under Dunnose, all the way across there, Ventnor to the Cats, and then taking a northwesterly path right up into Christchurch Bay before turning left on the starboard tack down to the corner there at St Albans, and then taking the little bit of the tide push over that bar there, and then right fairly in close to Portland before going south all the way out to catch what I see on the chart as avoiding a wind hole, which is sort of hovering over Torquay really. So that's GFS. And then moving on, we've got EC, which is completely different really. What it's saying now is that at the beginning, earlier on in the race, go up into Christchurch Bay, but then go south quite deep to the southerly part of the rum line, and then cut straight in across through Portland with the tide underneath you to get that bit of tidal acceleration across the bank there to the east of Portland Bill, and then going right up into Lyme Bay, and then taking a long starboard tack against the tide all the way down through to a northerly position at Dartmouth before dipping in around the Mewstone to finish. Now this has been very successful tactic in the past on this race, I must say. So although these models are completely different, then I don't think we should avoid this route. It must be taking a bit more seriously, because 2 or 3 of the models do say go this way, although the ensemble says something different. So just cracking on. Icon, normally quite good, once again says we should get up underneath the St Albans to try and get that acceleration of the tide over the bar there before coming straight down across into the deepest water off Portland, north of the Shambles Bank, before we go all the way across the rum line to a southerly point before tacking up on port tack as the tide turns into Dartmouth. So once again, completely the opposite sort of view there, which is good news really, because it makes a bit of a race of it. So what do I take from that? Well, if you look at the ensemble view, which is basically all the routes, all the gribs put together, 30 of them actually, you can see that we've sort of got a classic hockey stick in green for what the ensembler says we should do, which is pretty much a straight line all the way south before tacking onto port about 8 o'clock in the morning. Or you go north on port tack right the way into Lyme Bay on the basis that you're going to get a lot less tide and the wind is still going to be fairly fair there. However, I think there might be a wind hole around Torquay, as I said before, so that could be, maybe a slightly dangerous tactic. But, this is what the models are saying, so we mustn't ignore them completely. So, finish time there about 11 o'clock. I mean, some of the finish times are earlier than that, so, interestingly, all the models say that we should be able to finish this race between about 9 and 12 if you're in a Sunfast 3600 or a boat rating around the same amount. So, just looking back, as we said, that first bit of the race is going to be 20 tacks at least to get yourself into Sandown Bay, out of Sandown Bay, round Dunmows and round St Catherine's, which you might, if you're on track, get there about 20 past 6, which is quite interesting. Moving on, there's a big divergence on the models here on when you should actually tack for Portland. Some are saying go right, onto the beach at Bournemouth almost. Some are saying, tack even before you get to the Needles. And this will be really dependent on what time we get there tomorrow, what the wind is like, and how bumpy the sea state is. Obviously, the sea state is going to make a lot of difference in under the Isle of Wight there, depending on what tack you're on. Some of these models are saying tack right into the beach there. I'm not sure I would do that. But with a 12-mile diversion across the models, nobody really knows right now. So, when we get to past St Albans and out into the deeper water, what do you do? Most of the models are saying that it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. You should be getting off Portland, whether you're further south or further north, and then we know that at 4 o'clock in the morning the tide is going to turn east, so you've got tide underneath you. But do you tack north or do you tack south? This all depends on whether the wind is veered, how light it is, and what actually happens at that moment in time. So this could be the big tactical decision of the race, whether you go into Lyme Bay or you don't. And of course, as I said before, if you do take the southern route out, but south of the Rum Line, and you end up south of Dartmouth, then once again there's a big divergence in the models again. How far west and south do you go before you tack? Obviously, if you're north of the Rum Line, you don't need to consider this at all. But ultimately, that point when you tack is absolutely critical to get into Dartmouth and to avoid the wind getting very light. And then obviously the tide is going to turn as you go northwest, and that'll give you the opportunity to know exactly when you're going to get to the Mewstone or close to it to finish the race. So quite a lot of things to discuss there amongst your crew and your navigator to see exactly what you might do. So key points for the middle boat in the fleet, Sunfast 3600. So the wind overall, the wind is reducing as the race progresses, making timing of tacks very significant. So this is absolutely crucial. Sea state is going to get easier as the race goes on. So you've got to be, really setting the boat on its numbers all the way down. But at the start, we've got west-southwest, true wind direction 247, 250, 18 to 22 knots. So it's going to be quite a fast blast down the Solent. Hopefully it'll be, you'll be able to hold a big kite, probably, A2 if you can go for it. You've got the tide underneath you, so the apparent wind is going to feel less, so you can probably get away with that. And as the day goes on, the night goes on, it's going to veer around 260, 275, which is pretty much westerly, and easing as you progress through the race. In the morning, it's down to 6 or 9 knots as you arrive near the finish, making a tricky last few hours, and it could be a tricky beat from into the bay to finish, because the finish line is quite close to the estuary entrance by the castle, and that last bit of the race, as I said before, I've had to kedge there a couple of times in the past, so it can be a bit tricky. There's going to be some gusts and squalls, I think, off Bembridge around the back of the island when you're close tacking. You can see that the wind is going to be coming off those cliffs and down. So, there might be some wind shadows in there, which you go too close in to get out of the tide. You may end up in a hole with the wind veering all over the place or backing all over the place. So you've got to just have to look at the water and check very carefully that you don't overdo it, go in too close or go too far out. It's always fun down there, and luckily it's going to be daylight, so should be okay. When to tack off the needles, if you go that way, is absolutely critical, and that'll really depend on, I think it'll depend on the leaders at that moment in the fleet. Everyone will be looking at the plot, the tracker and the AIS, and determining whether they should carry on a little bit further or tack. I mean, obviously there'll be a lot of clearing your air, making sure you've got a good track across, sailing your own race without having to be affected by someone else's wind. Then at Portland, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be the middle of the night. It's going to be pretty dark. You're going to have the tide underneath you. It could be quite bumpy. And then you're going to have to decide, do you carry on past on starboard or do you tack onto port? And I really don't know what the answer is at the moment, and that'll depend on how the wind changes and the wind direction changes as the new models are launched during the night and early tomorrow morning. So once again, discussion on going north or south of the rum line in Lyme Bay. That's quite an interesting one. So overall, the facts are that we've got a mean true wind speed of about 16 knots, but most of that happens on Friday afternoon. We've got a maximum speed of about 23, 24, but you might have gusts more than that. And as I said before, looking at the models, I'm just going to look a bit more closely so I can see the numbers. We have got quite a difference in the models, as you've seen on the charts there. But in terms of the ETA, then they're all around between 8 and 12, I think, during the day. Obviously, that's a big divergence, but that depends on how much breeze you get at the end of the race. So as I said, models agree on the finish time. However, routing divided between how far north you go west of Isle of Wight and your route across Lyme Bay. All will mean further distance, and therefore your true wind speed and boat speed will be the predictor on when to tack. The winner could be the yacht that takes the most risk and not perhaps the average ensemble route. So, I've been in this race where the guys who went the furthest into Lyme Bay and the furthest north, they basically came in to Dartmouth from the Torquay direction with better tide and won the race convincingly by doing that. But that's just history. There's no reason to believe it will be the same this time. Okay, so final thoughts. All the information here is obviously freely available. we can all download it now quite straightforwardly, and I expect you're going to do that the same, on your own systems. I'm using this routing system called Navimetrics, but whether you're using Adrena or Expedition or any of the other more app-based systems, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Predict Wind, if you put the polars in correctly, is as good as any. All of them use the same, pretty much download the same grips. All of them use pretty much the same algorithms. So it really depends on how you've set up the system to give you what you want. Whether you put in, an extra percentage for the wind strength, or maybe you put in the sea state, or maybe you put a lower polar for nighttime sailing, or maybe you are basing it on 40 degrees true wind angle and 165 downwind. You've got to set those things up really accurately. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good the grib is, then you won't get a reasonable answer for your boat. So really crucial you do your homework there, and I'm sure everybody is really. Routings, have you seen in the presentation? They do vary, and it's unlikely that you should ever sail the exact routing, and bear in mind that the sea state really does affect how the routings, how the outcome of the routings will be relative to you and how you sail. So sailing the boat, obviously crucial, you try and sail to your polars. So key point for this race is look out for wind holes over towards Dartmouth when you get there. Also bring out your best tidal books and atlases. Some of the routing systems don't have very good tidal gribs in them, so you've got to make sure you are using the best tidal information, and maybe sometimes it's best to look at the physical books and make your own decisions, and not just based on what the routing software tells you. So there we have it, Morgan Cup. Hopefully the weather's going to improve all over the weekend, so the return trip, if you go into Dartmouth, probably will be overnight as well, and it looks like at the moment you might all get home under spinnaker, because the wind is going to come round to the east by Sunday afternoon, but hopefully everybody will be back in the Solent by then. So those who do stop in Dartmouth, I think there's going to be a barbecue, and the Royal Dart Yacht Club always put on a good deal or a good show, and it should be a bit of fun. Not sure whether we'll go in or not. It really depends on our finish time. So thank you very much for listening. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to publish this video now, but also I'll see if I can publish the PDF of the presentation as well, so you can look at it in a little bit more detail. As I said, things are changing rapidly on the models, so it could be that by tomorrow morning this is going to just be quite a lot of history. But let's hope it's given you some ideas, and it's been and I enjoy doing it. So thank you very much for watching. If you're watching, all the best. Bye bye.